Good morning. Online people can be. Good morning. Those who are online, can you hear me? Right. So today we are going to discuss about Right. All right. So good morning again. Good morning. All right. So there are only few people are there, right? Because of the rain. Sometimes they will be later. Right. Today we are going to discuss about board governance. Right. So if you can remember, we have discussed under the corporate governance, three major areas we are going to discuss in this discussion. So mainly the risk management, ethics, and the board governance. Right. You can remember, we have discussed. So under that, I'm coming to the board governance. Actually, I'm speaking some corporate governance codes. The Indian corporate governance code. I will take it the sixth session. Code is online. I'm taking the board governance thing prior to that because we need to discuss that. Then we can understand the international codes as well. Okay, I'm back to the right. So when it comes to the corporate governance, right? So when it comes to corporate governance, we have discussed that corporate governance is including the three main areas: the risk management, board governance, and the ethics. So today, the basic corporate governance concept. So when it comes to the board governance, right? When it comes to the board governance, you can see the corporate governance model here, right? So that what we are having in every business, right? So in the top, we can see the shareholders, right? In the top, we can see the shareholders. So what the shareholders are doing is, they are delegating power to the board of directors, right? So on the second session, we have discussed the agent principal relationship. You can remember, right? What the shareholders are doing, they are delegating power to the board of directors. So we are having board of directors, right? We are having board of directors. So in this board, the board is headed by the chairman, right? Board is headed by the chairman. And also they are having CEOs and the executive directors, as well as the non-executive directors in the board. So today we are going to discuss about this part, right? So under the corporate governance, we have to discuss all of these parts, like the committees, the board governance, and the functions, and the role of the external auditor, right? So today we are going to discuss this box. Board of directors, basically we are having the head as a chairman, and we are having a CEOs and the executive directors and the non-executive directors. So when it comes to the CEOs and the executive directors, so their role is to perform the functions of the organization, right? Or the day-to-day activities of the organization. So basically, these are some common functions. Some companies are different functions. It's dependent with the company, right? So when it comes to basic functions, we are having financial reports in every business. We need to report our financials, and also the risk management. As we are going to discuss in the next few sessions, the risk management is very important. If you're not managing the risk, so the company will be collapse sometime, right? And the internal controls. So basically, because of the operational risk, we need to have the internal controls. Like we need to have some sort of operations going on in the business. So therefore, we need to have internal controls and conduct of the business and operational matters. So those are few functions, and these functions are overlooked by the internal auditors, right? overlooked by the internal auditors, and they are having a direct contact with the audit committee. As we discussed, they are not reporting to the board, right? They are reporting to the audit committee, which is a committee of the board. But that committee is represented by who? The non-executive directors. So the executive directors are having a kind of a work to do in the company's function. While the non-executive directors, what they are doing is they are doing some monitoring part. Monitoring part. So basically, they are involved with the committees under the board. These committees are under the board. Committees under the board, basically, they are having the audit committee, remuneration committee, nomination committee, and sometimes some companies having related party committee. Right. Right. So internal auditors who are overlooking the functions of the organization are directly reporting to the audit committee. And what the audit committee is doing is, if they are find out, if the internal auditors are reporting something for them, then they are coming to these functions indirectly. They are advising these functions indirectly. That's why I'm using this type of balance. Right. So then the board, the CEO and the executive directors are the leaders of these functions. So they are delegating their power to the management. Right. Again, there is a principal agent relationship is there. The executive directors who have your power to do the functions of the organization is delegating power to the management. Right? Delegating power to the management. Right. So in the non-executive area, so we are having the monitoring part, we are having different committees. So these committees are overlooking these functions and the management. Right? And when you are looking at the external auditors, right? External auditors are not reporting to the board or not reporting to any other part, but they are having a kind of an indirect relationship with the audit committee. Right? Indirect relationship with the audit committee. That means they are not directly reporting to the audit committee, but they have an indirect relationship. What you mean by that is, so if the external auditors are find out any kind of a deficiency, any kind of let's say fraudulent activity, any kind of fraud or error in the financial statements. So their role is, firstly, before going to the opinion team, before going to the reporting part, so they have to discuss with the company. If there are deficiencies like this, so they have to discuss with the audit company, right? And try to negotiate or try to get some solutions. So if they are not getting any kind of solution, then only they are reporting or they are providing opinion to shareholders that the financial statements are not progress or it's not presenting to and fair. Right? So this is how the company runs. This is the corporate governance structure, the model, the normal company setup. Understood? Right. So under this, we are going to discuss firstly this part. Right. So when it's on the board, right? When it's on the board, basically we are having two parts of two different directors, mainly. As I mentioned before, executive and then executive. So who are the executive directors? Who are the executive directors? Who are the directors? Who are the directors? If I say directors are shareholders, yes, is it correct? Directors are shareholders. Yes or no? Yes. Those who are saying yes, yes, that's all. Directors are shareholders. No. Directors are not shareholders. Right? So it's debate, right? Sometimes the shareholders will become a shareholders. Sometimes some shareholders will become a director. Sometimes shareholders appoint different people to the director board. Right? So both can be happening, right? So therefore, when it comes to directors, as we discussed, shareholders delegating power to the directors to manage their basically the money, right? They are investing in the company, right? So what do you mean by the executive directors? Executives. Who are the executive directors? And next question is whether the directors are working for the shareholders' interest. What's their role to perform? They have to work in the shareholders' interest or what interest? Shareholders' interest. Shareholders' interest. Some shareholders don't want a profit taker. Some shareholders don't want a company to expand. Profit takers are working for their interest. So legally, shareholders having an interest. The legal concept is if you are a director, so you are having a legal binding to perform the company interest, not the shareholders interest. Company interest, right? Company interest is what? So if let's say the company is more to perform a profitability, more profit, so that's you are as a director, that's why that should be your interest. Like that, because the shareholders like taking interest, because those company shareholders are keeping. So they can again take interest. By taking interest, the company interest. So as a director, so what is your interest? The company's interest. Once you know it, they will not attack. They are taking more given. They will currently go there. No more can be taken. They will then up again the deal. All the one anchor. Someone can come a deal for the car deal. Right. Someone can be point go sell. Like someone getting interest. Very. Hello, give me the wealth regarding. Right. වැඩිපුර කැමැත්ත තියෙන එක තමයි කම්පැනි එකේ ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් එක. ඒ ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් එක තමයි ඩිරෙක්ට් ඉන්ට්‍රස්ට් එක වෙන්නේ. So director is legally binding to perform the company's interest, not the shareholders' interest. Indirectly, it will sometimes it will the shareholders' interest, but the company interest should be the director's interest. Since they are not performing the interest, therefore there's an agency properties arise. That's we have discussed. So I'm coming to the question: who is the executive director? Executive. What's the role of executive director? So, who? How the executive director?
They are responsible for the entire business operations.
The entire business operation. The executive directors.
Yes.
Right. Any other item? Exactly. So the entire business operation, correct answer should be executive directors are involved with the day-to-day activities, right? Day-to-day management of the business. So as I mentioned before, the functions, so they are basically performing they are heading actually the reporting function, risk management function, right? So they are the heads, right, of these functions, the management activities of the business, right? So their role is to perform the company's interest, right? And also for that they are getting some remuneration as well. So like they are performing a job, right? So they are having a different job as a director, and also again they are having a job as a management or they are heading the management. Right? So therefore they are receiving salary for that, the remuneration for that, and they are having a kind of a internal interest because of that. Right? So they are called as executive directors. Then non-executive directors. Non-executive directors. Non-executive. They will yes. They are not involved with the company's day-to-day activities. When it comes to non-executive directors, they are also two parts. One is independent non-executive directors and the normal non-executive directors. Right. So who are the independent non-executive? Independent non-executive directors. So it is called non-executive directors as well because they are not actually involved in the company's day-to-day activities. Sometimes the company will hire them to perform specific jobs. Non-executive, they are not involved in the day-to-day activities. Sometimes the company requires them to perform particular activity. So then that person or that non-executive director will not be independent. Right? Even though he's a non-executive, right? Because he's performed some particular jobs, right? So he or she will not become independent. Right. So those are those people we call as executive directors. And the independent non-executive directors, they are not involving any activities in the business, right? They are not involving in the day-to-day activities of business. Right. Right. They are not involving any day-to-day activities. They are purely independent. Right? Purely independent. Right. So why we have independent non-executive directors? What's the reason? So many more business. Independent non-executive. What's the reason? So as he said as a minority, non-executive independent as a product in the minority interest of the job. They actually moderate the board, basically. That's good. And also sometimes we are appointing the executive independent directors for basically the monitoring part, basically for the body team nomination, because we need to have a kind of independence there. So if you want to have independence in your board, so we need to appoint an executive independent director. And also sometimes some companies will appoint the independent executive directors to get the expert ideas for the business. Right? Because they are having kind of an expertise in different fields. So therefore they want to get some ideas from them, right? To develop the company. Right. So therefore they are in an executive independent director. So basically in the board we are having two types of directors, executive and non-executive. So non-executive can be dependent and independent. Non-executive also can be dependent and obviously the executive dependent because they are performing the day-to-day activities of the business. So then the next important person in the board is who? Who is the chairman? Chairman is the head of the board, right? So all the activities in the board is actually overlooking by the chairman, right? So he is the head of the board. And the next person is the CEO, right? Chief Executive Officer. Who is the Chief Executive Officer? So when you are looking at this board governance structure, which we have discussed, right? CEO is headed the executive directors. Right. Right. So board is headed by the chairman, while the executive directors are headed by the CEO. Right? CEO. Who is the CEO? Is the main person who is headed the day-to-day activities of the business. Right? Or overlooking the day-to-day activities of the business, overlooking the functions of the business. Right? Functions of the business. So these are the people who is actually, as we can say, key players in a company's board. Right? So basically we have discussed. So it is called directors. In the board, we have directors. Basically, we have two types of directors: executive, non-executive. Right? So non-executive can be dependent and independent. Right? But when it comes to executive, always obviously They are dependent. And we are having the board headed by the chairman, and the executive directors are headed by the CEO. Right, CEO. So that's what we are going to learn. Right. Right. So what is the board? Yes. What is the board? A board of directors is a group of individuals elected or appointed to oversee the activities and governance of the company. Right? Right. So they are doing two things basically. They are right. What kind of functions they are performing. So that is overseen by the director as well as they are looking at the governance. Right? They are looking at the governance. Right? They are looking at the governance. How the company is controlling. Right? What are the guidelines the company is having? What are the principles the company is having? Whether they are actually performing. That is overseen by the board of directors. Right? The board's primary responsibility is to provide a strategic direction, ensure the company is well managed to supervising and protect the interests of the shareholders and other stakeholders. Right? So their primary objective is to provide a strategic direction to the company. For example, basically their main role is to take the strategic decisions of the company. Right? To bring your company to the next level. Right? Strategic decisions. What are the strategic decisions? Examples. Strategic decisions. Yes, expanding how? Expanding is a kind of common how. How you are going to fix the strategies. So basically, we can go for the amalgamation, acquisition of a company, right? And amalgamation and acquisition is two different things. What are the different amalgamation and acquisition? Amalgamation means you're joining with someone, right? Acquisition means you are going to buy. You are directly buying. Amalgamation means you are joining to do it. Like we are having SLT Mobitel amalgamation. Previously, they are separate two companies, now it's SLT Mobitel. And acquisition means so it's a know something, the dialogue and person to understand, right? So now at the same brand, then they are continuing. It's a lot of. Right. So one is expansion, yes, as a strategy, we can do the amalgamation and acquisition. And also we can implement new products to the market. So all those decisions should be approved by the board, not by the shareholders. Should be approved by the board. Right. So board members are having a primary responsibility to provide the strategic direction to the company. අනාගතේව කොතෙන්ද යන්නේ? අනාගත ඉස්සර අනාගතේව කොතෙන්ද යන්නේ කියන එක direction එක දෙන්න ඕන board. So they are the actually main hub of the every business and ensure the company is well managed through supervising and protecting interests of shareholders. All the assets and the money the investors are invested should be well managed and it should be protected. So the board is having a such kind of a role. Right. So basically, when you are dividing the specific role of this board, so these are one of the questions in the examination in your paper, right? Role of the board. Right. The first one is strategic direction and oversight. Right. Setting vision and vision. The board is responsible for the company's vision, mission, and strategic goals. Right. So what do you mean by vision? What do you mean by vision? What do you mean by vision? Vision negative. What is your vision? Yes. Yes. Yes, the long-term goal. The vision sometimes it's difficult to achieve. difficult to achieve. Right. The vision එකක් ගමු සමහරවිට achieve කරගන්න බෑ කියලා හිතනවා. ඒ බෑ කියලා හිතන එකක් තමයි vision එක. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට Ford company එකේ vision එක තමයි මොකක්ද? ලෝකේ හැමෝටම කාර් එකක් දෙන්න. Ford කාර් එකක්. Right. ඒගොල්ලෝ vision එක. අපිට ඒක achieve කරන්න බෑ. හැබැයි achieve කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැමෝටම කාර් එකක් දෙන්න. So that's a vision, right? So those visions and the other strategic things should be set by the board. That is board one responsibility. And strategic planning, approving and overseeing the implementation of long-term strategies. It is very important, right? Because if you are taking a decision and if you are approved to the decision. So therefore, as a board, you have a kind of responsibility. Kind of responsibility. Because the Lanka, right? Lanka, right? Parliament in cabinet cabinet is the board. So if they are taking a decision, what will happen? The strategic decisions and other government decisions is someone else behind the impact again. Right. So what is it? Company badly impacted on the balance decision. Therefore, as a board, you have a responsibility. You have a role to play. Because you need to show the direction to the government. And you need to oversight. You can review it. Right. Monitoring the performance. So after setting up the strategies, so you need to monitor whether it's actually achieving, right? In a long run. Regular review the company's performance against the strategic objectives. You need to regularly review the strategic set kara. Is the plan done? But I'm not saying the intention is to Lanka, Asia, Australia. You slogan again. Lanka, Asia, Australia. So we have to work. We need to look at the performance. We need to look at the review the performance. So that's your role. Setting only, let's say, as a director, you think your role is setting the direction or showing the direction. You have to go in this part. That's not my role as a director. So after setting up the goal, after setting up the mission, so you need to regularly review whether the people are going in that path. Right. So that's what you have to do as a director. And next one, governance and compliance. The second problem, governance. So what is the as we discussed, board consists of the directors. Directors are the major or they are heading the company. Right. So they need to look at how the company is governed. Right? Corporate governance framework, establishing and implementing a robust corporate governance framework that promotes transparency, accountability, and ethical behavior. Right. So that's your role. So since the corporate governance codes are not legal, as we discussed, so as a director, you are having a role to implement the transparent, accountable, and the ethical behavior set corporate governance framework. Right. And the regulatory compliance, very important, right? If the company is not complying with the regulations, right? So company can't run. For example, let's say you are listed in the Colombo Stock Exchange. But after listing, you are ignoring all the listing rules. What will happen? Definitely, Colombo Stock Exchange delist you. Right? It will badly impact your company. So, what director's role? You need to look at whether the companies comply with the laws and regulations. You need to ensure that. Otherwise, it will badly impact the company. Right. Ensure the company complies with all applicable laws, regulations, and the standards. Right? And when it comes to the financial reporting standards, also this is coming up. Right? So if you are reporting the financials, right, you need to comply with the financial reporting framework. LKS and the SLA factors. Right. Right. So otherwise, you can't be there as a company. Right? If you have to comply with the accounting standards, and also if you are following the financial reporting correctly, you need to comply with the auditing standards as well, right? And policy development, developing and approving key policies that govern the company's operations. Right? Policy decisions, that's also the role of the board. Right? Taking a policy decisions. What do you mean by policy decisions? Policy decisions. What do you mean by that? Policy decisions. Begin of policy decisions. What's the difference between the normal strategic decision and the policy decisions? Policy decisions. Yes. What do you mean by policy decision? One policy decision taken by service to mark your attendance through the QR code. That's a policy decision. Right. And the service expand into the other part of the goal road. It's a strategic decision. Right? It's a strategic decision. So what do you mean? What is the difference? Yes. Policy decisions. This can be changed, like Srilanka. This can be changed, but strategic decision you can't change. Well, yes. So sometimes, yeah, the policy decisions sometimes the long term and the short term. That's correct. But many of the strategic decisions we are having a decision for the long run. Right. What is the difference between policy? Policy and the strategy. Intellectual प्रतिभा strategy sorry about. Yes, correct. That's the answer. Policies are mainly the operational matters. Yes. For the operational matters, we have the policies. Right. For example, we are in a policy like we are not providing. We are in a credit period of 2 months. That's how much. And we are providing a credit shares. That's our strategic decisions. Right. So the policies are mainly matters in the operation activities. The kind of a, let's say, ground level than the strategic decisions. Right. So that also role of the board. Right. The Lanka we have current policy decisions running. Right. Government technique. Right. So we are taking the policy decision. We are not taking the strategic decisions. Right. Abhi balance other. But we are not taking the strategic decisions. While the first priority should be the strategic decisions, while you will align the strategic decision with the policy decision. Right. So that's what we need to do. As the shareholders also, we need to look at how the people are taking the policy decisions and the strategic decisions. That's how you have to vote. Right. When you are voting. This is what you have to look at. What kind of strategic decisions they have, what kind of policy decisions they have, whether these are actually going forward. They are reviewing, they are working on that. So people are coming with a different stock, and right? Asia, one of Asia. Strategic are set, but they are not doing. So likewise, as a board, if you are not performing this role, what will happen to the board? Definitely, shareholders act against the board. So therefore, they have to perform this role. Right. And next one is the risk management. Very important role the board is having. Definitely, if you are a company, you need to manage your risk to a kind of acceptable level. Right. Because if it is going beyond the acceptable level, the companies are basically right. Acceptable. අපි කියන්න බෑ අපිට risk එක නැති කර ගන්න ඕන. risk එක නැති කරගෙන අපිට business කරන්න බෑ. ඒ තමයි ෂෝක්. right. risk එක නැතුව business කරන්න බෑ. If you want to earn return, definitely you have to take a risk. Right. You have to take a risk. Otherwise, you can't earn a return. So basically, what you have to do is you need to manage the risk to an acceptable level. Right. ඔයාලට බයා කරගන්න පුළුවන් මට්ටමකට ඔයා risk එක manage කරගෙන යන්න as a company. If it goes beyond that, company sometimes the most bad thing the company can happen is the company can be collapsed. Right? Risk oversight we will discuss. This is a separate discussion. Right? I will take 5 weeks to discuss risk management. Right? Big discussion. The risk management. So basically, risk oversight and risk mitigation part should be done by the board, right? Risk oversight, identifying, assessing, and monitoring the company's principal risk. What kind of principal risk the company is having, and then ensure the implementation of effective risk management strategies and internal controls. Right? දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් මේක risk එක තමයි insurance companies වල තියෙන එක. ඒක ලොකුම risk එක තමයි insurance risk එක. What do you mean by insurance risk? Insurance risk. What do you mean by that? For example, as I mentioned before, if the Titanic, right, you insurance कर दिया वाले company, right? एक बार में Titanic की खबर हुई, मतलब insurance company वहाँ है, insurance company Titanic की साली क्या नहीं है, so what they are doing is they are investing and earning interest. That's how they are running. The insurance companies are running through the investment income. Right. So they have to mitigate that. So how they mitigate? They have to reinsurance companies. Insurance companies also again reinsurance. In a global companies, they are global reinsurance companies like Ministry, like they are little companies, big companies. So the risk oversight, what are the risks we are having? That's the role the board needs to identify what are the risks we are having, and as a board, you need to give some strategies to mitigate the risk. So this part is actually very important when we are attracting potential investors as well. Because in the annual report, if you look at the risk management part, they are having a separate part called enterprise risk management. Right? Enterprise risk management. So in that part, they are mentioning what kind of risk we are having in a different level, let's say operational, strategic levels. Right? In different level, what kind of risk we are having. For example, sometimes they are saying that in their annual report, this time annual report, they are saying there's a new company is coming up to Sri Lanka, but still it's not there. But once the company is coming up, so our sales can be dropped. That is a risk they have identified in the annual report. So they can suggest the mitigating strategies. So what we are going to do, right? So when as an investor, I'm going to invest in this company. I know the company is coming up, and because of this company can collect. And also the existing investors also know if the competitor is coming up, our share price will be dropped. So what will happen to the company? Before the competitor is coming up to the business, right? Sometimes they will lose their investors. Right. So that is why as I mentioned before, nowadays, right, investors are not looking much on the numbers. What they are looking at is how the company is looking at the future, not financial needs. So if you are suggesting a kind of a rational mitigation strategies for that, then investors are thinking, now they have a plan. There is a risk. They have identified that risk, right? And they have a plan for that. For example, they are saying that we are going to introduce a new product, likewise, for example. So now the investors are having financial comfort regarding the topic. Right? So therefore the risk management is very important, right? So sometimes if you are not paying the risk, that is the, as I mentioned before, that is the biggest risk you are having. Company can share very risk risk manage currently. Right? That's the biggest risk. So one of the role of the board is to manage the risk management. Then the next one is the financial oversights, right? So when you are reporting the financial, so you need to ensure the integrity of the financial statements and the accuracy of the financial reporting, because as we discussed, the financial statement fraud is the biggest fraud that can be happen. So therefore, the people are taking decision looking at the numbers, the economic decisions. So if you are not providing the correct numbers, people take wrong decisions. Right? So therefore, the financial reporting, you need to ensure that the financial reporting is reporting the correct figures. And the audit, when you are looking at the financial oversights, you need to look at the auditing process, right? So basically, this part is controlled by the non-executive independent directors and the audit committee, right? And budget approvals, reviewing and approving the annual budgets and the financial plans. This is also very important part of the budget approval in the business. If you know, if you are working in a company, right? Budget approval part is very important, right? We have the budget approval කරගෙන තමයි මාරු වැඩි. right? நம்ம function එකක් බලනවා අපිට very good budget එක දාගන්න. right? Budget එක ගන්න. So it's a basically a huge job performed by the board, the approval part. right? අපි කොච්චරක් මේ අවුරුද්දේ investment වලට invest කරනවා. Lanka become like a expand. Business expand කරන්න ඒගොල්ලෝ development එකට ඒගොල්ලෝ කියලා කරනවා. In the government, this is also behind the budget. Right? Behind budget. People over the line. Profit making, but we are making good profit actually. The government uses that to the NDAs, TV, so yeah, it's not huge profit. So through that profit, we actually give back to the society. Yeah. So when it comes to the like private institutions, what they are doing is they are looking at mainly they are two reasons. One is the expansion. Next is the data. To do those two, you need to have a budget. Budget table and operations run करने हैं तो तभी मेरे पास budget कटिंग अलग करने expansion है. The Lanka में कान पे budget कहते हैं. अब बाहर में यहाँ होते day-to-day activities की रन करने हैं तो expansion. मैं यहाँ होते budget के साथ में then बाहर day-to-day activities run करने salary setting कर लो. There's no expansion. Expansion. And बाहर वाले मतलब net. So they are looking at the day-to-day activities, how they are going to run the day-to-day activities. Do the project. Then the leadership and the succession plan, very important, right? So CEO and executive appointments, selecting appointment, and if the necessary, moving the CEO and other senior executives, performance evaluations, succession plans. Right? So recently there are two the directors, like major investors, like who are they? One is Harry Javala, and next one, the same person is also there, right? So I can't remember his name. Harry Javala and yeah, John is CEO. I can't remember the name. So what will happen? So Harry Javala means one of the biggest big shot. He's a big shot, right? They are not going to go there. They are not going to go. Should be a succession plan, right? Succession plan. ඊළඟට එන එක්කෙනා ඉන්නෝනේ. Right? The replacement should be there. If the replacement is not there, what will happen? Very can figure. That's happened to the party, political party. Suddenly the big shot is gone, they suddenly collapse to the big person. Right? Because they don't have the succession plan. That's right. They don't have the succession plan. Right. Then the next one is stakeholder engagement, not the shareholders, right? Stakeholder. Right? You need to engage the stakeholder. You need to maintain the shareholder relations, ensure the effective communication with the shareholders and addressing their concerns. Right? So you need to have effective communication. Right? So if you are going to take a kind of big decisions, you can discuss with the shareholders. You can call upon a special meeting and you can ask from the shareholders what their concerns. Right? So that should be done. Right? Otherwise, investors are they are not working for our interest. Right? Again, we should do. This is okay. Right? And stakeholder interest. Right? Balancing the interest of the various stakeholders. It's very difficult to balance the various stakeholders' the interest. Right? Stakeholders are to government, shareholders, employees, suppliers, creditors. Right? Environmental, sometimes they are environmental committees and other things, parties. Right? So we need to address those concerns. Right? Now we're going to go there. We don't want shareholders. We don't want stakeholders. Yeah, we are only concerned about the shareholders because we are getting money from the shareholders. Right? So I will give you one example. There's a in Srilanka actually Coca-Cola company. Like what happened to the list? They have the people noticed that they have released the wastewater into the Galle. Wastewater into the Galle. So what did happen? People refused to buy the Coca-Cola. So what did happen to the company? So they have corrected somehow. But suddenly there is a kind of a refusal is coming now from the society. Because you are not engaged in the stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement is a kind of private part of private responsibility of the board, or one of the responsibilities of the board. Stakeholder engagement, not the shareholders, right? Not only the shareholders, but also the stakeholders. Then ethical conduct and corporate social responsibilities, very important, right? So you need to maintain, right? You need to maintain this, right? Ethical involvement, right? Very ethical involvement. Report a color no ChatGPT can dala in advice color. You should be ethical, right? Likewise, right? You need to promoting a culture of ethical conduct and integrity throughout the organization. Right? Organization through ethical culture build kara, integrity build kara. And also the CSR, the corporate social responsibilities, right? So that is very important for the sustainability. Right? So if you think that we were got to them, people Galle ඔක්කොම පුළුවන් තරම් වතුර ටික අරගෙන Coca-Cola හදලා ඉවර කරනවා. ඒක මොකද? මේක ඉවරනේ. හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලන්ට වතුර දෙනවා. So we need to look at the sustainability long term. Right? While performing our business, right? We need to protect the environment. We need to protect the society. One example is the what you call the cement company. Tokyo. Right? So what they are doing is the cement company got those money. So then another cement. Until gas name, we need to super again. So one of their project is they are in a coral reef project. The coral will in the very from oxygen generate benefit. ඒගොල්ලෝගේ main project එක තමයි ඒක. corals protected as a token. While they are harming to the environment, they are giving a kind of social, corporate social responsibility. These things also actually people are looking at. Right? It is overlapping the way. So that's why the IFRS S1 and S2 is coming up. The climate control and the what do you call the carbon emissions. Like, so there is a requirement that 100 companies in Sri Lanka should implement the IFRS S1 and S2 initiative. Right? So they have to measure the carbon emissions. How much of carbon emission you are actually releasing to the earth. Right? You need reporting. There's no report. And no report carbon emissions or carbon right? Carbon emissions factory other maybe carbon emissions to the AC. Right? So we get to report to the people are looking at this because why? We are looking at the future. Basically, not the case. Today we are making a huge profit, but in future there's nothing to make profit. So therefore, people are looking at the sustainability, long-term growth or long-term sustainability. Right? So that's why financials are coming up or the overcome the financials. So this is one of the key roles of the board. Right? So basically, these are the role of boards. Right? Board actually we are having basically seven. Right? Strategy, settings and oversights, and secondly, and remember. Second one. Are you yes, that's the second one. The second objective or the role. Yes. Yes. Other roles. Yeah. What are the other? Strategy or strategy direction. So I follow a part again. The second one. Policy. Policy development. Yeah. Any other stakeholder engagement? Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Can I get listen? Financial discipline, okay, financial oversight, financial reporting oversight, yes, discipline, leadership and succession plan, and the CSR and the and, any questions? No. Great. No questions. So this is very important. When it comes to board, when it comes to board, having a so they must board taker up to take someone board taker हमारा बोर्ड में कुछ नहीं ना हमारा कई बार तो बोर्ड के इतना चलाने अब अभी हमारा डायरेक्टर्स नहीं ना वो लोग कंपनी से हिस्सा भी तो ट्रेड करता right so they don't know what happened in the business right अभी पार्लियामेंट में नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर्स वाले ने कहा यहाँ की लाइसेंस की गिल्डी right They are the non-executive independent directors. While we are in that, to get the expert idea, to get the independent ideas, to run the business, right, to run the company. Right. Sometimes the non-executive directors or the non-executive independent directors, they don't have time to participate in board meetings. Right. So as a director, you need to have sufficient time to address the board concerns, address the company's concern. Right. So that's we need to discuss under the scope of the board role. To be effective, board must be meet frequently. Right. So if you are having a kind of a concern, the board should be met. Right. It's a board because physically you meet it not by then. ඒ වලට ඉක්මනට කෝඩ් මීටින් එක ගන්න පුළුවන්. අතිශය. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට දැන් එක දවසක් නැක එක කම්පැනි නම කියන්නේ this is recording. Next one I will tell the name. Right. Cyber attack එකක් ආවා. රෑ 11ට. ඒක පාන්දර වෙනකන් තිබ්බනම් එහෙම කම්පැනි එකේ ඉන්වෙස්ටර්ස් ඒගොල්ලෝගේ සල්ලි ඉල්ලනවා. එකපාරට කවුන්සල් සල්ලි නැති වෙලා cyber attack එකක් ආවා. The board has called upon a meeting at midnight. And they resolve the problem before the morning. So as a board, you need to meet frequently and you need to have time to do that. Right? The Singapore Court of Corporate Governance, we will discuss these courts, different courts in the different companies or in different countries. Right? The Singapore Court of Corporate Governance emphasizes the need for board to meet regularly and as warranted by circumstances. That's what I mean. So, right, regularly you have to make, and also if there's any kind of concerns, major concerns are there, you have to definitely call upon the board meeting. Companies should amend their constitution to provide for the telephonic and video conference meetings. Right? The previously actually in the constitution it says you have to meet. Physically, there's no options, right? Yeah, recent 2017-18, right? We don't have a Zoom or something like that. We don't. We only Skype. Right? Skype is they got right? Now, yeah. Even we have one support, right? If you want to have a meeting, right? Then the ICGN guidelines that's I've been discussing with you under the international corporate governance codes emphasize the importance of the non-executive directors meeting in the absence of the executive directors as often as required and on a regular basis. That's very important thing. Right? But what it says, executive directors are not non-executive directors like meetings. They are not non-executive independent directors. Because when the executive directors are coming to, when both are coming to the meeting, sometimes the correct view is not coming down. Right? As a independent non-executive directors, you can have a meeting, separate meetings. Right? And directors should have sufficient time to fulfill their responsibilities. Right? Sufficient time. Right? Some are getting them. Board meeting end up the parliament did anything. So they have to come to the parliament. Even though there's any kind of a major issue, that's okay. Parliament දෙකට තුන් සැසි තුනකට අනිවාර්යෙන් ආව නැත්නම් කෙලිම parliament මේක නැති වෙනවා. Right? Membership එක නැති වෙනවා. So you have to come to the parliament and you need to provide the opinion. Right? You need to have the time for that. Right? Some company directors are directors in 20-30 companies. Right. They got called the project engineer. Right. So they don't have time. Right. Some are visual updated now. Our director right. So you need to have sufficient time to fulfill their responsibilities. The UK Corporate Governance Code states that the board should not agree to a full-time executive directors taking on more than one non-executive directorship. In FTSD is like we are having in 20 companies, right? In Sri Lanka, the biggest performing companies. So that is in the UK, FTSE, 100 companies, know the chairmanship of such company. If you are an executive director in a company, right, so you can be a non-executive director in another company. Right. Well, my company executive director in a company, any company can non-executive director in a company. Right. So in this corporate governance code, it says the board should not be agreed to full-time executive directors taking on more than one non-executive directorships. එයාට ගන්න පුළුවන් ඔයා full time executive director කෙනෙක් නම් company එකේ. එයාට ගන්න පුළුවන් එක non-executive directorship director. Right. Because you need to ensure that the sufficient time should be there to address the company's concern. Company can provide a rule if you are accepting our executive directorship, so you can't be there in any other company as a non-executive director. Obviously, he can't be a non-executive director in any other company. He can be a non-executive director, independent non-executive director, or independent non-executive directors for the company. They are not family. Board meeting they are providing expert ideas. To ensure the sufficient time is there. So these kind of rules you can provide. Right. The time commitments for the non-executive directors should be set out when they are appointed, and they should undertake to have sufficient time to discharge their role. Right. So this time thing is actually a major concern with the non-executive directors. Right. හරියට වෙලාවක් නැති ප්‍රශ්නේ ගොඩක් ඉන්නේ non-executive directors because they are sometimes they are non-executive directors in different other companies. So sometimes they don't have time. So what you can do is you can, when you are providing appointment, you can say you have to be like in the month of this month, this date, you need to be there for meeting. You can allocate your time to our meeting. So likewise, you can provide some conditions. Right. So that is the scope, right? As a director, if you are performing the role of the directors, you need to have the time, and you need to have a sufficient expertise, as well as you need to have a kind of a yes. What's the first one? I can hear. You need to meet frequent. That's the time. Right? Frequent meetings should be there. Right. The battles for the board discussion. So this matters. The board should have a formal schedule of matters, especially reserved to it for decision at board meetings. Some would be decisions such as mergers and takeovers that are fundamental to the business, and therefore should not be taken solely by the include acquisition and disposal of assets of the company or its subsidiaries that are material to the company, investments, capital projects, bank, borrowing facilities, loan, and foreign currency transactions, all above size to be determined. Right. Right. The board decisions are the schedule board decisions. Right. Summer mission executive directors will interact with executive managers from the executive directors will interact with there should be non-executive directors also. Like they are taking a major decisions like majors and take focus. Summer decisions will be bank loan and like decisions they can have a board member and do that without non-executive board. Right. But it's better you can have non-executive directors when you are making decisions. Right. Another task, monitoring the chief executive officer. That's one of the major tasks of the board. Board take a task as the executive chief executive officer role like CEO chairman duality should not be there. Because one of the major duty, major matter that board is looking at is monitoring the chief executive officer. So if the chief executive officer and the chairman is the same person, what will happen? Right? Like right? It is actually comply with the corporate governance code, right? Because it's a task of the report. Overseeing the strategies, right? If you are the strategies, you have to oversee whether the strategies are doing correctly or correctly. Monitoring risk control system and the governance, monitoring the human capital aspects of the company, example, succession, training, transformation, manage potential conflict of interest, right? Managing the potential conflict of interest, ensure that there is effective communication of internet, both internally and externally. Right? These are the matters the board are, or the decisions the board are taking. Right? So these are the things the board are. Right. Right. Any questions? Any questions? So this is question number 2 of last week paper. 18. Yes, the corporate governance course. The corporate governance and risk management. Right. So this is question number 2. Basically, so actually this time I have not. So that group is very good, right? So that's why. But a group of basic right? This is very easy, right? So what? Yeah, I've asked you to explain how the shareholders would benefit this role of the chief executive and chairman were respected, and an effective non-executive chairman was appointed. Right. The second question is uh, the board diversity we discussed, the latter part of the discussion. Explain the concept of board diversity and discuss its benefits to the governance of an organization. And lastly, discuss the role of non-executive directors in corporate governance. In your answer, explain the key responsibilities of NEDs, that means non-executive directors. They are involved in ensuring the good governance and the challenges they face in maintaining the directors. Right? It's a kind of a practical question. Right? The non-executive directors are independent, challenges of independence. They are big challenges, right? Because they are independent. So they are, let's say, for example, they are looking at the audit committee. So for the audit committee, they are having a kind of a complaint from the internal auditors that the chief executive office is not working properly. He's not providing information to us. Right. So therefore, the audit committee should report this to the board. Right. So let's say the CEO is the one of the big shots. So what will happen? Sometimes in a not in a legal way, illegal way also sometimes no, some people are coming out for their independence. Right. So this answer you can provide. Explain the key responsibilities we will discuss in the class. Key responsibilities we are discussing. But when it comes to this one, the importance in ensuring the good governance and the challenges they face in maintaining independence. So you have to think as right. For you, by your experience. So I will allocate 10 marks for that. So when I write it, don't write pages, right? Don't write 50 pages for this question, right? Some are doing this, that's why I'm taking this. So now, සමහර කට්ටිය මේ ලකුණු 10ට 50ක් දෙනවා. Like, don't. So you need to separate the question. What you have to do is discuss the role of non-executive director in corporate governance. That you can write within using 3 or 4 lines. Right? 3 or 4 lines. So then you can separate, you can explain the key responsibilities. Right? In point 4. Then the importance of corporate governance and the challenges. එතකොට පළවෙනි එක නාලා තියෙන්නේ. නැත්තම් මම යන challenges කොටි. right? ඊට පස්සේ importance කොටි. අන්න එක්සෙට් කියන කවුද කියලා තව තැනක. You need to be specific in your items. Right. ඒකෙන් සමහරවිට ලකුණු නැති වෙන එක හරි වෙනවා. දැන් මොකද වලින් දෙක හොයන්න බෑ. So someone partition of pool. Therefore, it is right. The first you can write the non-executive director's role. Who is the non-executive? Then the roles, the responsibilities, then the challenges. Right. Right. So after finishing off this session, we will provide the answers for this question, right? Right. So then the attributes of the directors. What do you mean by attributes? Attributes. Attributes. What do you mean by attributes? Attributes the qualities or the experience, or we can say kind of a combination. What kind of combination we need to have, right? In order to carry out the effective scrutiny, directors need to have relevant expertise in industry, company, and functional areas of governance. For example, when you are looking at the Sri Lankan companies, most of the directors are the chartered accountants. Most of the directors, let's say more than 40 to 50%. More than 50%, right? The chartered accountants, right? So you feel like if you want to become a director, you need to have a finance knowledge. No, it's not correct, right? So you need to have a different expertise in the board. For example, you can have a lawyer, you can have engineer, right? You can have some other experts, right? You can have sometimes if you are working with the society, you can have kind of or your company is directly relating to the environmental sort of concerns. So you can have a kind of environmental expert. Right. Right. So if you are working in a different sector, like finance sector, insurance sector, right? So we can have such kind of expertise for that. Right. The board as a whole need to contain a mix of expertise and show a balance between executive management and independent non-executive directors. Right. Right. So you need to have a kind of mix, right? As well as you want to have a executive non-executive mix. Right. Executive non-executive mix. Then the company executive directors are with short workable. Executive directors are interactive. You have non-executive the corporate governance boards also. They are providing some limits. You need to maintain this much of. You need to maintain more than what you call. You need to tell the board. You need to have more non-executive independent directors. Right. And these are the moral attributes. The key report is provided by the UK. The person working, right? So he has provided a report, right? This is a corporate governance report. Lists 5 moral attributes that individual directors should have. Right? Acting with the intellectual honesty and independence of mind in the best interest of the company and its conflict of interest, taking into account the legitimate interest and expectation of the stakeholders, competence, having the knowledge and skills required to govern the company effectively, commitment, diligently performing duties and devoting enough time to the company's affairs, and courage, having the courage to take the necessary risk and to act with the integrity. So those are the few attributes, right? So mainly what you have to look at is the mix of expertise you need to have in the business, in the company. That is the main attribute we need to have. Right. And version of necessary information, as we have in many corporate scandals, the board was not given the full information. Right. Right. So as a board, you need to provide the information the required by the stakeholders, required by the shareholders. That's your duty as a director. Right. Most of the scandals like Enron, right? They don't provide the information to shareholders. They only provide the annual reports. So suddenly the company collapses and lose the money of the shareholders. Right. So as a director, one of your great attributes should be you have a kind of version of necessary information. Right. The UK report states that it's responsibility both of the chairman to decide what information should be made available and of directors to satisfy themselves that they have appropriate information of sufficient quality to make sound judgments. Right. Right. That report is states, right? Chairman අනිවාර්යයෙන් provide කරන්න board chairman should provide a good information, quality information to the board members to make quality decisions or sound judgments. Right. Right. And the South Africa King's report highlight the importance of the board receiving relevant non-financial information, going beyond assessing the financial and quantitative performance of the company and looking at the quantitative measures that involve broader stakeholder interests. Right. As I mentioned before, not like financial information, you need to look at the relevant non-financial information as well. Right. You need to provide the information to shareholders for the non-financial information. Because the non-financial information are the information where it shows the long term of the business. Right. How we are going to manage the risk, what they are doing for the sustainability. Right. So therefore you need to provide a kind of non-financial information as well. Right. So shall we have a break? Then we will discuss about the board diversity. Any questions before that? So when it comes to so some companies having a kind of designation called CEO, COO, right? And some companies, both people are same, CEO and CEO. Right? There's a fashion, there's CEO. So CEO, right? What is the role of the CEO? So maybe what we are discussing. CEO is looking at the overall operations of the company, like all the functions of the operation. Like they are not only looking at operations, they are looking at other parts. But when it comes to COO, they are looking at he's mainly looking at operations. That's the difference. CEO or CEO looking, basically. CEO is looking at overall the company. Right? COO is looking at operations. So that's the main difference. Right? Yes, any questions? Adi. What are you going to question? Yes, any questions? Any questions? Are you ready? Yes. Any questions? Okay. I think it's more than Alright, let's have a 15 minutes break up. Only 15 minutes. I will start just 12%. 15 minutes break. So now 10:20. 10:25. Those who are in online, any questions? Online, any questions? Guys? All right. Right. Let's start. Okay. Right. So in the board, this is right. We are going to start now. So board diversity. Right. What do you mean by board diversity? What do you mean by board diversity? Diversity. Yes. Board diversity. Oh, the diversity. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? Sorry. Right. What the board diversity again? Huh? What do you mean by board diversity? Yes, guys. What do you mean by board diversity? Yeah, board. Diversity is a variation of social and cultural identity among the people existing together in a defined environment or market settings. Right? Diversity කියන්නේ දැන් අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම බෝඩ් එක diversity එක පුද්ගලයෝ ඉන්නවා. Right? Cultural විදියට social social concepts තියෙන right? For example, the famous diversity we are discussing in the board is male female diversity. Right. So we are saying that in the board we need to have a more female directors in the board. Right. In the Kansa, it's on parliament also. So that is why we need to discuss about the diversity. Diversity in the sense not only the gender diversity. Right. So diversity in the sense there are, let's say, they are having a kind of age diversity, right? In a board, right? For example, let's say if you are going for a board, right, you are representing the younger generation. So sometimes you need to have most of the time the board is having elder people in the board, right? Elders are there, right? Board taking. But when it comes to new businesses like information technological businesses, so we need to have a young blood in the world, right? That is the kind of requirement, right? So age will be better, ethnicity, like race, right? Right. The race, although it's a concern, right? So because different races have different traits, right? So if you are going with a business, so sometimes that is kind of necessary thing. Right. For example, when it's from the Amana Bank, right? So they are director board, the board Muslims and the Singles is there. So they need to address both the requirement. Right. So that's why the diversity is very important. Primary categories of diversity include the age, race, ethnicity, and the gender, while secondary category of diversity include the education, experience, right, the beliefs, and the backgrounds. Right. The primary category should be gender, right, race, ethnicity. Secondary category should be the education, right, education, your background, right. So using those diversity is very important. Why? Because as I mentioned before, sometimes not only the chartered accountants, not only the accountants should not be there in the board. We need to have different people, right? Lawyers, we need to have a different experts, right? For example, as I mentioned before, the information technology company like the fast moving companies, right? So they need to have a young people in the board, right? Because the young people is having kind of good ideas, great ideas than the elder people. Right? So you can have those kind of board, right? Mix of, mix of experience, right? You can have a mix of experience, right? And you can have a mix of race, right? You can have a mix of like gender, right? දැන් සමහර ගොඩක්ම මේ diversity board diversity එක ගැන කතා කරද්දී ගොඩක්ම කතා කරන්නේ gender diversity එක. අනික් කරවලා. Right? When it comes to Sri Lankan companies also, right? Most of the directors are genders, not males. Right? They are males. Right? Right. So the female directors are, the number is very low. Right. So therefore, most of the people are looking at this one. And some people are talking against this. They are saying that this is the way you have to go with the male. There are different arguments are there. Like one is so director role is to address the income of the right? So when addressing that, so yeah, 1,000%. They are actually when they are going to do a code, right? The level of doing codes sometimes very lower, and also they are codes. Right? That's in nature. Right? Attitude again, you know, like a when they are doing something, they are hit twice. Right? So they are being twice. Right? So therefore, when it comes to business, sometimes these attributes are very important. Right? So we need to search and then go look. ඒක හොඳ උදාහරණ තමයි අද මම ගන්න කියනවා. ඒක තමයි විනාඩි 5 ඉන්නේ මේක කරද්දී අර මම ගන්නවා. සමහරට ඒ නම ගන්න අල්ලනවා. ඒ කලින් එළිය නම දැකගෙන ආරම්භ කරගෙන කියලා ඉඳන් දෙන්නේ අරගෙන. ඒක දැන් ළමයි කඩේකට ගියාම අද මම ගන්න experience I know. I have always I know I'm sitting there for hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, waiting for one course. Sometimes you will not buy anything. Right? Right? So why? That's the inherent thing they are having. They are searching, and taking the decision. Sometimes that decision to some companies that needed. Right? So that's why the gender diversity is very important. The UK corporate governance board said that when the directors are appointed, the board should have due regards for the benefits of diversity on the board, including gender diversity. So as I mentioned before, when it's about board diversity is a kind of a different sort of race, age, and other sort of things. But mainly we are discussing about gender diversity. Right? Mainly we are discussing about gender diversity. In its 2011 Green Paper, the European Commission stated that the diversity of the expertise and backgrounds is essential if the board is to function effectively. Right? So in this report, it says you need to have a different different level of experience, different types of expertise in your board. That should be must, right? And different backgrounds, like different backgrounds. Like accounting background, right? The medical background, the engineering background, social background, right? So we need to have a different people in the board, right? And the commission highlights variety of professional backgrounds, national or regional backgrounds, and gender diversity are the most significant consideration when assessing the diversity. So some of those companies, let's say, they are working in a different countries, right? Different countries. So mother company, they are in a mother company that they have different branches in different other countries. So let's say they are only having a, let's say this company is in Sri Lanka. We are only having the single people or the Sri Lankan people in the company, right? So they can't understand the requirement of other countries. So what we need to have different people, different directors from different other countries. to our company. Right. Right. So this has been done by actually the audit firms mainly. Right. In the audit firm, they have a main hub. Right. When it comes to KPMG, they have a main hub. Right. In that main hub, some representatives are there from the different countries to address the concerns. Right. So that is a kind of reform we want to business. Because diversity is very important. Which are very important diversity of the quality that right company. Board take the diversity in for. Again, very from a gender with gender diversity, local impact they not research good and bad. Some TV or you need to make so with the males of the can't out TV and rely on right. The late decisions sometimes will impact the company. Sometimes the good decision will represent as the go think, then the good decision will come. Right. Right. So therefore the diversity is dependent. Right. So you need to look at what type of business you are doing. So depending on the business, you need to decide what kind of diversity you need to have. Right. Right. So that's why the diversity we are discussing, right? Because it's very important, right? So I have a few questions. So I need to get your ideas. Right? Identify the benefits that board diversity can bring to the governance of the organization. So I have picked this question and I have put it to the paper as well. Right? Identify the benefits that board diversity can bring to the governance of the organization. I'm asking the common diversity, not the gender diversity. So how the board diversity beneficial to the corporate governance. Right? And explain the gender diversity. Now I'm coming to gender diversity. Right? The board. So you need to explain what you mean by gender diversity. And what are the arguments in favor of female representation in the board? So what kind of argument you are having about the female representation of the board that we see under gender diversity? What kind of argument you are having? Whether it's a good or bad. Argument in the sense it's not asking the female. I'm not asking whether this female is the female representation good. I'm asking to argue. Right. So in the good or bad side. So if you feel like female representation good, so you need to build your argument for that part, that side. If it is bad, you can go with that one. Or else you are having a kind of both ideas, so you can write for that. So you need to build an argument. Right. So try to write the answers for these three questions. Just quick answers. Only 5 or 7 minutes. Yeah, yeah. Good. GBD that by GBD that you online chat GBD, right? Very good. Yes. Exam better than all like chat GBD. Go to. Okay, so based on the chat GBD, what is the benefits? About diversity. Identify the benefits, yes. Can you explain to the class? Yes. Any volunteers? Any volunteers? Other benefits. Diversity. Yes. He said, enhance the risk management. Very good. Right. One, very good. Right? Because you are having a different expertise in your board, right? So you can look at the risk in a different perspectives, right? So it will enhance the risk management. And also, when it comes to financial reporting, so it will enhance the financial reporting quality also, right? And also you can, when you are taking the strategic decisions, right? Because you are having different people in the business, different people in the board, right? You can have a good decision, good strategic decisions, the board, right? Yes. Any other thing? Yes. Innovation, right? Innovation is also there, right? Innovations, right? You are having a different people, different, let's say you are having software engineers. If you are a technological company, you are having software engineers in your board, right? So they do and develop the new products, right? Right. Right. So innovations are there, yes. Any other thing? This management, yeah. Control. So yes. Any other thing? Those are the benefits. Right. Yes, that's what I have told you. When it comes to the some companies, you have kind of different cultures in the business, right? Different cultures you need to maintain, right? Therefore, different cultural people should be there in the board, right? Yes, those are the benefits, right? It's a general question, right? So you don't want to put it to the chat GPT, right? Again, it's chat GPT down again, import with that, and then over my life. එක්සෑම් එකකට ඉඳලා මම කියන්නේ අපේ ඔගේ ජීවිතේ දේවල් හිතන්නත් ඔය ඇක්ටිවිටි දාන්න පුළුවන් ඉස්සරහ. ජීවිතේ එලිමිස් or the job. Like don't put everything to charity as for your help. Like when you're doing some activity and get some additional information, you can do that activity. Other than that, for the general questions, don't use ChatGPT. It's an AI tool. Like the bank wallet, someone who personal decision and got the ChatGPT. Make a lot of here. The ChatGPT. Because in your examination, you don't have the ChatGPT, so you have to think right. So when you use the ChatGPT, it's only rating now. Think ability. Right. General question. The board. What are the benefits of the doctor? That's a basic question. Then gender diversity is what the mix of male and female in the board. Right. That's very easy. The next question is a very hard question. Sometimes it depends on it's in the favor of the female representation in the board. Is it good? Yes, most of the researchers have been found that you need to have a female directors through the profitability, the company's stability, and the company's performance will increase, right? So in recently, right? So now actually companies also move into the more female directors. So what are the benefits? What are the arguments for that? What is the research findings are there? Like just any other thing? So one key role of the directors is to ensure the corporate governance, ensure the group corporate governance structure is there, right? So based on the females, right? So they are actually exhibiting more concern about the corporate governance, right? They are having some sort of a they are having a concern regarding the controllabilities, right? Like corporate governance, behave they are having kind of good ethical behaviors inherently as a humans. And also when we are taking decisions, right, as I mentioned before, they are think and take the decisions. Right? So sometimes those things are very important. It has a decision making ability. And also for the risk management, they have a different perspective in risk management. Different perspective. Right? Not like males, they are having a different perspectives. Right? So that perspective will help to enhance the risk management of the company. Yes, any other thing? And when it comes to the talent acquisition, right? Talent acquisition. So previously we are only looking at the male directors. So now we are having a larger pool, right? Larger pool of male and female both, right? So we can get the suitable one to the board to a larger pool. Yes, any other things? Any arguments? This side, yes. At once. There are multiple talks at once. It's something the female side can do, right? Some females are like, well, I don't want to run sometimes. They are right. Giving a of them, එක දෙයක් කරනවා. සාමාන්‍ය focus එක තියෙනකොට එක දෙයකට ඉන්නේ. ඒක inherently තියෙන එකක්. Right. Also find out the research. Right. They can do multiple tasks at once. They can actually they can have a kind of a that's kind of ability that they are having. Right. They can you know what one more legally you know together. Right. They can you know research and stuff. Right. Right. Any yes, anything kind of rational thing? Right. That's correct. Those regulations will be increased, right? Once you are having a big numbers, so the numbers in the board as females, right? People representation. People think that your company is having a kind of a great access to the different pool of people. The expert we are looking not only the males, we are looking at the children actually. The expertise we can get, right? It will create some image. And it will enhance the investors' confidence, right? For සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මේකට දැන් ගොඩක් පිළිගන්නේ මොකද දැකලා නැහැ ඥාන කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා මොනසේ වෙඩිලා ක්‍රිමිනල් කොමෙන්ට්ස් කරන අඩුයි යනකොට බයයි ඉන්ටර්නෙට් තියෙනද right එතකොට එහෙම ෆීමේල්ස් ආ ඉන්නේ බෝඩ් එකේ එතකොට ඉන්වෙස්ටර්ස් වල පොඩි කන්ෆිඩන්ස් එකක් එනවා right මේ කෝපරේට් ගවර්නන්ස් ස්ට්‍රක්චර් එක පොඩ්ඩක් හොඳ විදිහට යනවා කියන්නේ but the issue here is right. So since the gender diversity is a kind of a concern, right? What the companies are doing, so because they want to go with that, so what the companies are doing, only 2 or 3 directors are hiring as a female director, and they are keeping with the males. Right? They are only representing. Right? But it is not the requirement. These female directors also actively participate with the, or they have a kind of a majority participation with the board decisions. It should be there. සමහර කන්නේ මේ issue එකකින් දැන් ඔයා කියපු the point එක. දැන් companies වල වැඩිපුර females වල directors වල විදිහට නැත්නම් female directors වල විදිහට ඒක companies promote කරනවා. Right? You can see recently they have appointed a chairman, board chairman, right? As a female, right? So they are promoting that, right? The investor confidence is enhancing from that. දැන් ඒක ප්‍රොමෝට් කරලා හැබැයි ඒගොල්ලෝ මේක්ස් තමයි විශ්වාස කරන්නේ. අර ෆීමේල් නිකන් නමට කියන්නේ. ඒක අපි ගත්තොත් එම ගවර්න්මන්ට් එකේ වුණත් නෑ. අපි කියනවා කාන්තා නියෝජනය වැඩි කරන්න ඕනේ. වැඩි කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා ටික දිනක දාගෙන අර කියන්නේ මේක්ස්. එහෙම නෙවෙයි. කාන්තාව මේ ඩිසිෂන් එකට ඉන්වෝල්ව් වෙනවා. So they also needs to be there in the decisions. They need to actively engage with the decisions. Then only this board diversities or the gender diversities, we are saying that gender diversity is there. Mixture people voting up again. So these females should be involved directly with the decision making. Even though the mix is there, the gender mix is there, but when you are taking the decision, right, males only doing that. Right. Right. So most of the companies are doing this. So the best gender diversity is the females also take the decisions, or they take to involve in the direct decisions. Right. Right. So then now moving on to the appointment of the board, right? So elect the board members. So nomination candidates are typically nominated by the nomination committee or through the shareholders' proposal. So we are having a separate committee called nomination committee in the board. So through that committee, or mostly the shareholders, through their proposals, through their proposal things, the directors are proposed. Right? Shareholders are proposed and directors are. Right? That's the nomination committee again proposed. A nomination committee again board meeting sorry, shareholder meeting nomination. So then shareholder vote. These candidates are then presented to the shareholder for election at the annual general meeting AGM. Right. Right. So those who have nominated through a nomination committee or through the shareholders proposal are put into the AGM to vote the shareholders. They should get the votes of the shareholders. Then the voting mechanism, shareholders cast votes either in a person at the AGM or via proxy. What do you mean by proxy? Yes, you can appoint a separate person. You can delegate the power. Right? Then appoint a separate person. The candidates receive the requisite number of the votes are elected to the board. Right? Very votes and affiliate to vote with the first members. Right? So that is how the election is going on. Then appointing board members, appointment by the board. In some cases, current board members can appoint new members to fill vacancies that arise between AGMs. So that is in the constitution. Right? Constitution, right? So until the AGM comes, you can appoint the directors. Right? That decision you can take from the board of directors. Board taking decision can ගන්න පුළුවන් AGM එකෙන් එනකම්. Right? තාවකාලිකව director කෙනෙක් පත් කර ගන්න පුළුවන්. Right? But this clause should be there in the constitution. Otherwise you can't. Right? ලංකාවේ ඉන්න එකපාර right? ජනාධිපති කෙනෙක් නැතුණාට පස්සේ ටීවී විජේතුංගව පත් කරා. Right? ජනාධිපතිවරුන් එකපාරම කවුද? ප්‍රේමදාස. මතේ නැතුණාට පස්සේ ටීවී විජේතුංගව පත් කරා. Right? As a replacement. Right? Until the election comes. Right? Appointment by specific authority. Certain board members may be appointed by specific authority, such as the company's founders, the controlling shareholder, or another designation entity within the organization. Right? Some companies, ඒගොල්ලෝගේ තියෙන authority එකේ board members වගක් කරනවා. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට වැඩිම shares තියෙන board shareholder obviously a board member. That's there in the constitution. So this is actually happening in the government institutions. Right? So in the government institution, the board chairman will be appointed by the president, by authority. Right? By authority. Right? So in the private companies or the PLC companies also, sometimes you are having a kind of clause that you can say the founder member should be a board member definitely. or the highest number of the shareholding, if the shareholder is having the highest number of shares, then obviously he will become a shareholder. Definitely, he should be a board member. Right. So those things will be there. So that likewise, you can appoint the board members. Right. Appointment by the board or appointment by the specific authority. Other than mainly what we are doing through the election, we are appointing the directors. So otherwise, we can have appointment by the board or appointment by the specific authority. Right. Right. So that's how the people are appointed to the board. Then the professional development of the board. Right. So when it comes to the board, දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ බෝඩ් එකට ආවට පස්සේ අවුරුදු ඉතින් අවුරුදු 20ක් විතර බෝඩ් එකේ ඉන්නවා. right. So අපි ගත්තොත් Nokia කියලා Nokia telephone company the board members අවුරුදු 20ක් විතර එකම බෝඩ් එකේ. But they don't know about the new trends. They don't know about the new technology. Like they don't know. Even you are knowing that, but those people are not knowing. Right. So what you need to do? You need to professionally develop the board. You need to develop the board, right? Right. You need to develop the board, right? The Hitch report point out that directors should continuously extend their knowledge and skill to remain effective. Right? If they want to remain effective, they need to continuously develop their knowledge. Right. The summer board members are also right. So then, when they are the board members are, what's their role? They are going to set the strategic direction to the company. Right? If they are not knowing the new things, they don't have the required skill, what will happen? Those strategic decisions are outdated. Right? So therefore, always to have effective board, you need to have professional development. And always you need to remain live as a board member. Right? You need to have the knowledge and the skills required at that certain time. The report suggests that the potential directors' professional development should concentrate on the board's role, obligation, and entitlement of existing directors and the behavior needed for effective board performance. For existing directors, significant issues that professional development should cover regular include strategies. Because if you don't have the proper knowledge, as I mentioned before, if you are setting the strategy goes wrong. Then we got the Nokia, right? Nokia කියන company එක කොහොමද? Director board එක දාන්නේ මේ මොනවද Android phones ගැන. Right? So they are in their strategic direction. What they are having, they are only having the traditional mobile phone. Right? They are not going with the Android phone. So what will happen? Because the directors don't have that knowledge. So if you don't have that professional development, so it will impact the strategy of the business and the management of the human and financial resources. Right? Or if there are regulation issues may be arise. Right? Legal and regulatory issues. Sometimes new regulatory framework has been implemented, but the directors are not knowing about that. Like for example, the SME companies, the previously 48%, the tax rate is there, now it's 30%. And the tobacco and the other companies, they are having 40%, now it's 45%. And for the online sales, like platforms, they are having a 15% income tax. And new developments has been there. New taxes, new regulations are been there. Not only those things, what will happen? It will impact the company. The risk management, right? So you need to identify the risk like new risk, the COVID-19, the environmental risk. You need to identify those. You need to remain live as directors. If they are not remain live, then it will impact the company. The effective behavior of the board directors, such as influencing skills, conflict resolutions, changing skills, and board dynamics. The technical background of the company's activities so that directors can properly appreciate the strategic considerations. For example, in a fast evolving field such as financial service or the technology. Right? So when it comes to financial service, it's rapidly growing, rapidly changing. Right? අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම දැන් ඉස්සර බැංක්ස් වල ගිහිල්ලා ෆෝම්ස් ගොඩාක් පුරවලා අපි ෆික්ස් ඩිපොසිට් එකක් ඕපන් කරන්න. ෆික්ස් ඩිපොසිට් එක ඕපන් කරන්න then after just for 1%, we can open up a fixed deposit. Right? So if one company is going with that and another company is not going with that, what will happen? Right. So you need to look at as a board. Board is representing the company actually, right? Board is making the strategic direction to the company. So if you are outdated as a board members, what will happen? Companies are actually companies also die. The board also die, the company also die. So you need to remain like that. You develop as a board member. If you are a board member sometimes, the board will not say, they will hurry. I want to see that achievement. I'm the board member now. Right? My final destination is now become a board member in a company. So now I've become a board member. Now everything is fine. So now I can sleep peacefully. Right? No, you can't. You need to develop. You need to learn. You need to gather skill. Because the business model is rapidly changed. So if you are not changing, right? If you are not having the required knowledge, you can't be there in the business. Right? Be there in the business. ඉස්සර ගත්තොත් දෙව ගොඩක් ගත්තේ ගත්තොත් වයසක කට්ටිය තමයි අපි කියන්නේ බෝඩ් එකේ ඉන්නවා කියන්නේ. මේ දැන් කියනවා අපි ටෙක්නොලොජි ගත්තොත් දැන් මොකද කරන්නේ? right? Technology. So technology එකත් එක්ක තමයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉන්නේ. ඒ technology එකත් එක්ක ඉන්නේ අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම දැන් යක්මත් එක ඕනේ. right? Risk board එකේ අනුගානේ risk advisory board එකට හරි ඕනේ. Because they are having the new knowledge. Right? They have the new knowledge. So when you are having university also, how the university are surviving, how the sub-campus is surviving, implementing new programs. So the management and the accountancy, accounting thing now deteriorating. So if you are providing a degree for accounting people, no one is coming. Why? There's a concern that people are saying the accountants will not having a job in future. So that's why they are coming to the business analytics. The new degree programs. Right. That's it. Business analytics. Because the trend is changing. Now they are coming with the cyber security and accounting. Cyber security and accounting. And they are coming with the forensic accounting, forensic auditing. They are coming with the information of the accounting information systems. So these are changing, right? Some behavioral factors also coming up in next few years. They want to survive. So if you want to survive, you need to update. The leaders should be updated. Leaders update them. I thought that update since big shot in the education field. Like, they have also get a big shot like that. Out to have a pension, you retire. So, right, retire. He is having a kind of an updated knowledge. He's working with us. He's getting our knowledge. And he's using that knowledge. That should be done by the board. Right? Right. Otherwise, you can't survive. Otherwise, you can't develop. So when I'm coming to actually in 2021, I just joined the university. When I'm coming to the SAP, right? SAP campus you pay you. CA, body corporate. SAP campus. Right? So now it's developing, right? Kind of a regular university. Sometimes some are Israel Lokoma University kind of developing. There are so many students now, 2,000, 3,000 students. It's a big number. So that is how people are developing, right? Even though the people are old, but if you're having a required knowledge, that's the requirement. So if you don't have the knowledge, that means you don't have the expertise, you can grab it from the others. You can have the young people with you. And when you are looking at the sub-campus, the management is very young. The management, very young. Very smart, very young. That is very important. That's why I'm highlighting. So when you are appointing as a board member, don't think everything is okay. Right? You need to regularly update to have the effective board. That's a big answer. That's why I'm studying. Right? Then the performance of board. Even though you are a board member, right? You think like our role is to look at the performance of the company only. Right? But as a board, we need to perform. Right? As a board, we need to perform. If you are not performing as a board, what will happen? Right? You need to perform. Right? Appraisal of the board performance and important control over it. Aim at improving a board effectiveness, maximize strengths, and tackling with the weaknesses. It should be seen as an essential part of the feedback process within the company and may not lead the board to change its methods and objectives. The UK Corporate Governance Board recommends that performance of the board, its committees, and the individual directors should be formally assessed once a year. Right? So formally assess. You need to assess formally once a year. Right? Board committees for the board members again, performance. You need to assess. Right? And ideally, the assessment should be by an external third party who can bring objectivity to the process. So you can involve a third party to assess the board members' performance. Right? Board members. And basically, these things are done by the auditors. Right? They are looking at the performance of the board. Right? They are looking at the performance of the board. In order to conduct effectively, the appraisal of the whole board will need to include a review of the board system, conduct of meetings, work of committees, quality of written documents, performance measurements in terms of the standard established, financial criteria and non-financial criteria relating to the individual directors, assessment of the board role in the organization, dealing with the problems, communicating with the shareholders. Right? If the review is carried out internally, the board members may be asked to assess performance using the questionnaire based on the best practices of the effective board. The questionnaire may be supplemented by the interviews. Right? Right? So this is you need to review the performance of the board. Should be assessed. The board performance should be assessed. Board එක හරියට perform කරනවා කියලා once a year assess කරනවා. Right? That's a good corporate governance or a good governance practice. You need to assess your board. Right? Then why you want to leaders assess කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Leaders තමයි අනිත් කට්ටිය assess කරනවා. But you should assess the leaders as well. Like a 360 feedback. Right? 360 feedback. 360 feedback කියනවා. යට ඉන්න කට්ටිය උඩ ඉන්න කට්ටිය ගැන කියනවා. ඒගොල්ලෝ ඔයාලා දකින්න විදියට ලීඩ් එකේ කියන මොනවද අපි කරන්නේ. The ground level, what you see as a kind of a bad things you are when you are looking at the leadership ability, what kind of development points you can suggest to the leader. Right? And also leader obviously will give you, that's a 360 review system. Right? So you can assess the performance of the board. And the performance of individual directors, separate appraisal of the performance of the chairman and the CEO should be carried out by the non-executive directors. Right? And what all directors should have chairman and CEO is a major person in the board. So you have to have kind of appraisal of the chairman and CEO using the non-executive directors. Basically, non-executive independent directors. Right. Criteria that could be applied including following independence, right? Very important, right? As a director, if you are not independent, right, then we keep thinking, avoid conflict of interest. You are in conflict of interest. right, as a director. So you can't work in a good way, right, in a best way to the business if you are not independent, right? Even though you are an executive director, you should maintain your independence, right? And no key staff, organization, and industry aware of statutory and vigilance duties. So that's very important, right? You need to know your staff, right? Then director විදියට ඔයා දන්නේ finance director කවුද, right? ඔයාගේ company එකේ ඉන්න key roles play කරන කට්ටිය කවුද කියලා දන්නේ. company එකේ main product එක හදන කෙනා කවුද කියලා දන්නේ. You need to know the key staff, right? And organization එක ගැන දැනගන්න ඕනේ. You need to know about the industry. Even though you are not an industry expert, but you have to know about the industry, what kind of industry, right? And you will know about the regulatory framework, statutory framework you are having in the business. What kind of a regulatory framework from the external and internal bodies, from the external, from the government, from the legalized bodies, from the acts, right? What kind of things you are having for the business, right? And participate actively questioning of obtaining information undertakers professional education. Right. So you need to develop your professional education. So for example, if you are only a chartered accountant, you can go with the law. You can become a lawyer. Right? You can get that knowledge. Right? Committee work, understand process of committee work, exhibit ideas and you need to develop the committee work, the team work you need to develop, right? Development of the organization, make suggestions on the innovations, strategic directions. Right. Right. So you need to work for that. So these are the criteria when you are evaluating the directors you can use as a criteria. These are the general criteria. It will depend on the business. Right. So what we have to highlight is when you are looking at the individual directors, definitely you need to review the performance of the CEO and the chairman to the non-executive directors. Right. And also for the individual directors, you need to have a separate evaluations. Right. Whether the directors are performing their job correctly or accordingly. Right. Then the legal and regulatory framework, when defining the scope of their role, board must comply with the legal and regulatory framework. Right. So legal responsibilities, director has a duty of care to show reasonable competence and may have to identify the company against loss caused by their negligence. Directors are also said to be in position relations to the company. They must act honestly in what they consider to be best interest of the companies and in good faith. Right. So you are having a legal responsibility as a director. Like, as I mentioned before, the general legal responsibility of the director is you will act according to the company's interest. That's your legal responsibility. Now we have company interest rate වැඩ කරේ නැත්නම් ඒක legally what impacted. ඒ නිසා තමයි enron case එකේ chairmanටයි CEOටයි හිරේ යන්නේ. It's a legal, you have the legal responsibility. Right. Legal responsibility. Right. That's the legal and regulatory framework. Yeah. And the legal rights